Acquainted with the Night by Robert Frost.
I have been one acquainted with the night. I have walked out in rain and back in rain. I have outwalked the furthest city light. I have looked down the saddest city lane. I have passed by the watchman on his beat, and dropped my eyes, unwilling to explain. I have stood still and stopped the sound of feet, when far away an interrupted cry came over houses from another street. But not to call me back or say goodbye, and further still at an unearthly height, one luminary clock against the sky proclaimed the time was neither wrong nor right. I have been one acquainted with the night.
Okay, so the main meaning that I got from Acquainted with the Night was that from the scenes where you're in the city, from passing the watchman, where you dropped your eyes and you were sad, is that basically you are one with the world, you are alone, so you don't have any friends with you. So it is basically like the times where you don't really know where you're going and what you're going to be doing, but you're one with the world. So to summarize that theme in like 1 to 2 words, I would say chance and fate. So basically, like you're taking a chance with the night and you don't know what fate you're going to end up with in the end.
The American writer Robert Frost has been well celebrated ever since 1894, when his first work, My Butterfly and Elegy, was published in The Independent, a journal published weekly in New York City. Frost was born on March 26, 1874, in San Francisco, California. Frost did not have an easy family life. His father died of tuberculosis when he was just 11 years old. His father's passing prompted his moving to Lawrence, Massachusetts to live with his sister. In Massachusetts, Frost attended Lawrence High School for all 4 years and graduated to move on to attend Dartmouth College. During high school, Frost met his lifelong wife, Eleanor White. After some unsuccessful attempts of schooling at Dartmouth and eventually Harvard University in 1897, Frost began to focus more on starting a family with Eleanor. They married on December 19, 1895, and had their first child shortly only a year later. The happy couple tragically did not have good luck with their children, as they had 5 total and all had serious issues resulting in deaths, such as premature birth and suicide. It was not until 1916 when the literary world began to recognize Frost as a rising phenomenon. Some of his most memorable works were published in the Atlantic Monthly, gaining him instant fame. Frost continued to teach from 1916 until the early 1930s, when his wife was tragically diagnosed with cancer and passed away suddenly. Into his older years, Frost won 4 Pulitzer Prizes for his works on New Hampshire, collected poems, A Further Range, and A Witness Tree. He even collaborated with Ernest Hemingway and T.S. Eliot. Frost also wrote poems for President John F. Kennedy's inauguration speech. Sadly, on January 29, 1963, Frost died due to issues according to prostate surgery, but his legend of poetry lives on today. Analyzing the American poem Acquainted with the Night, I saw recurrent themes of stanzas that I could relate to an American soldier participating in times of war. Starting and ending the poem with, I have been one acquainted with the night, gives a sense that one is associated with times of darkness, which could describe how an American soldier could feel while participating in a battle. In the first stanza, it is stated that the author has walked out of rain and back in rain, and outwalked the furthest city light. These lines give a sense that Americans in war have walked from hell and back. They have been through the hardest struggles than any other citizen who has not participated in a war will ever know of. In the second stanza, the saddest city lane and the watchman represent the sadness that is experienced in a soldier's life. American soldiers have seen the worst of the worst. They have watched their companions die and have been severely injured in the attempt to serve our country. The poem mentions droopy eyes and unwillingness to explain, which hits the fear in our soldiers as they know they may die during a war against another country. The third stanza, describing the sound of feet and cries from houses across the street, reminded me of what some American wives have had to face when they found out their husbands were in critical condition or have died from participating in the war. In America, there exists much suffering, and the cries I heard while reading the poem made me immediately think of these wives hearing the bad news. The reference of time at the end of the poem made me think that timing is very important for worldly affairs in which Americans are facing war. We have had to come together to make sure our country stays free from any evil or darkness. Overall, what makes a poem truly American is if you can really truly relate it to our history and background as a country. I truly felt like there was a sense of freedom yearning to break free from the quote-unquote night. The poem is American because we have all at times in our lives broken free from a dark time, uniting us into a system of unity. America is a place of struggle, but also a place of hope, which is what Acquainted with the Night gives a sense of. Continuing on the subject of darkness, but also related to a glimpse of hope, will lead us to a deeper discussion of the poem's effect to linger in one's soul. Just like the themes of darkness, evil, and hope that I recognize in Acquainted with the Night, a poem can have many different meanings. A poem has the ability to connect with personal life events, which makes it able to linger in one's soul. Acquainted with the Night lingered in my soul because I imagined the scenario of a city scene with a watchman, which gave me a sense of a story being told, but I was able to think of other scenarios such as the night being like a war. The way a poem is read is important to its ability into lingering of the soul. As you audibly hear the words and the pauses in the stanzas, they leave room in your imagination to run wild. I believe that not just most poems, but almost all poems linger in the soul through the effect that each time one can be read, they can have a totally different meaning than the first reading. Not just one piece of information can be pulled from a poem, which is what makes a poem so successful in being memorable enough to linger in one's soul.